Hi boys, it's me, the irrefutable proof that your masculinity is a lot more fragile and reversible than you might think it is. A lot of people like to discriminate against people like me because, well, we're seen as different and unusual and we don't fit in properly to the established norms of society. Let's be real, you all only don't like us because you're a little jealous. At least some of you. If you're looking at someone like me and you see that there's an option to be different to who you currently are, it threatens the idea that masculinity is really the thing that should be on top. If there are so many people who'd give away this gift given to us and instead choose to become something else, something better. When you're talking about changing genders, it's important to consider all the different factors involved and all the different consequences that will come as a result of it. One of those consequences being the vast ways that your life is going to change as a result. So I want to talk to you a bit about why it's better to be a woman than it is to be a guy, despite the supposed disadvantages, of which there are a lot. But I can almost guarantee that by the end of this, there's going to be quite a few of you who I think will find that you do agree with my viewpoint. And in fact, being a guy is maybe just a waste of time, and that instead, maybe it's better to just be a woman. Let's be honest, men's fashion, at least normal men's fashion, kind of sucks. It's pretty limited in what's available for you to wear and honestly also kind of boring. 99% of the time the only options you really have are a t-shirt and jeans, or some form of trousers, but for me, always jeans. Yeah, there's other options, like when you're at work you'll maybe wear a shirt instead, and if you're going to like some sort of event, maybe you'll wear a suit or some sort of more formal thing, and then if it's really fancy, maybe you'll wear a tuxedo. And also if it's Halloween, maybe you will too, so you can cosplay James Bond for the 5th year in a row, because Halloween is cosplay after all. I mean, personally, I don't mind seeing guys wearing that stuff, but if I had to wear that stuff every single day, I'd be really bored. And I can say that for a fact because I used to do it every day, and to be honest, I'm sure you're pretty bored too. Just consider all the different clothing options available to women. Skirts, dresses, jumpsuits, tank tops, crop tops, jeans still, normal trousers. There's probably a whole bunch more stuff, but you get the picture. The variety of clothing is so much more. And on top of all of that, you can wear the men's stuff as well. And that's not even getting into all the different clothes that you can wear underneath or on top of all of that clothing too. And yeah, as a guy, you can totally wear all that stuff. In fact, I 100% support you, and if you do that, good for you. You should wear whatever you want. But let's be real, a lot of the time most people won't have the confidence to back that up because it's a scary thing to do. To be honest, I only first went out in feminine clothing once I was totally certain that I was passing as a woman in public. I was too scared to do it beforehand. I'd been medically transitioning for about 6 months at that point. I did a couple times before then, but you know, most of the time it was too scary. And I was kind of lucky that my body feminized so fast from hormones. From the little experience I have and from what I've heard from others, you get a lot of judgmental stares. And yeah, that is society holding us all back, but you know, we live in a society, etc, etc. So sometimes you are forced to fit in with that, whether you maybe should do or not, depending on how comfortable you are. Which means that to get this variety of clothing that you're missing as a guy, the only real option is to transition so you can wear it, because if you want to fit in society, but you also want to wear cute clothes, well, then you have to transition, to be perfectly honest. You have to be a girl. So boys, I propose to you, why not? To be perfectly honest, the reason why not is because women's clothing can actually be a real pain. Yes, it's cute and there's a lot more options, but most of it isn't going to fit on every individual's body. I have a jumpsuit that I own, which I really like. It's not made for the average height woman, and even at the smallest size, it wouldn't fit a woman of average height. It's almost like this piece of clothing was made for trans women. It's stupid. And when you wear clothes that don't look good on you, it can often make you look really bad too, and that does not help when you deal with body image issues, which I definitely do, but so do a lot of women. And a lot of guys too. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I'm someone who's gone through a lot of body image issues throughout my life. Too big, too bulky, fat in all the wrong places. But, you know, everyone feels that. And that only got worse with age, with my body slowly masculinizing more from the testosterone still running through my system at the time. All the time denying that it wasn't me hating my body, it was just, this is how all guys feel. Every guy doesn't want to look like a guy, right? Who hasn't gone through that? I mean, I'm sure I'm saying all of this and it's obvious to you that you're like, yeah, obviously I can relate to that. Of course no one wants a male body. Nobody would. Nobody would. Although, maybe if you are thinking, I don't like looking like a guy, you probably should explore that thought a little further. And I can tell you, a couple years down the line now, since I started transitioning, A lot of those gender-related body image issues are gone, apart from one thing that's still bothering me. Most of my body image issues are gone, at least in regards to my gender. However, the body image issues that come from being a woman are horrific. I know this video is meant to convince you that it's better to be a woman than a guy, but it wouldn't be fair and balanced of me to not mention the fact that I have not dealt with so much bad body image issues as I deal with now. There is a possibility that some of those body image issues are because I didn't care how I looked as a guy, so I didn't care how I looked. I don't know how much of it I can blame on that. I think some of it is just societal pressure, which I just didn't feel before. So in terms of presenting a fair and balanced view, I thought it's only right to mention that issue. You know, weirdly, one of the things that got me to realise all this about myself, that it's better to be a woman than a man, is that being called handsome just doesn't work. It just doesn't feel right to me. Kind of kickstarted my body image issues, which have been in denial for honestly quite a long time at this point. Because who wants to be handsome when you can be pretty? Masculinity is a very convenient mask to wear to prevent you from feeling any feelings you may ever have. I mean, as someone who has rejected their masculinity, I don't really miss it. But sometimes the masking me from the suppressed emotions I had that prevented me from actually experiencing the reality of my situation was nice to have. It was sometimes nice to be able to ignore the reality that I wasn't happy. Like a dam that's super strong and nothing is ever gonna break it. Well, maybe it wasn't as strong as I thought, but it did still last about 23.5 years, which really isn't bad. I don't really know how long the average dam lasts, but I feel like 23 years is pretty good for one made out of flesh. And yeah, the suppression of emotions might be something that's more toxic masculine than actual masculinity, but when you're someone trying to fake masculinity, which I'm sure you do, it's kind of what you got. Because the thing is, when you are a guy, you do have that expectation to fit those toxic masculine stereotypes sometimes. Fitting this notion that you have to be aggressive, emotionless, dominant, all that stuff. Aggressive and emotionless don't really go together, but with nothing but contradictions. They're broad terms to describe toxic masculinity, but it gets worse than that when it gets to guys who refuse to wipe their ass because they're worried it makes them look gay, or those people who refuse to look after their own kids because they're convinced that that's the woman's job and they shouldn't do it. And obviously there's situations in workplace cultures where this toxic masculinity helps the men stay on top, and you know, maybe that helps perpetuate sexism in the workplace, but hey, right now you're benefiting from that. Which is to say, I'm not really selling right now why it's bad to be a guy in terms of masculinity. From my perspective, my general attempts at masculinity generally involve trying to grow facial hair or trying to fit in with the boys, which just generally involve doing dumb stuff a lot of the time. There's nothing wrong with that, but I was faking it. I definitely had moments of anger before, but that wasn't from the masculinity, that was a general frustration with how my life was going. But all of my attempts at masculinity always felt like I was faking something. And if you're anything like me, and let's be real, who isn't, faking masculinity is all there is to masculinity. For me, it was feeling so wrong about myself that I did actually have to just fully transition. And when I did, being feminine was not hard. It felt just natural. It did take some time at first to stop feeling, I guess, cringy is the best word, at being something that I wasn't used to being in public. But once I got past that, it was like it was always what I was meant to be. I could drop the mask I mentioned earlier. Because masculinity wasn't effort for me. I had to put work in to be masculine. And you probably do too. When, let's be real, to be feminine, all you need to do is cook, clean, and look after the kids. Okay, I mean, that's not right. I don't know how to define femininity, and to be honest, I wouldn't even want to try. I don't need a definition to know how I am and who I am. In a way, that's why it's so funny when people are so obsessed with trying to define what a woman is, what being feminine is, because for the people who are, it's just something that's innate. Whether that person's cis, trans, or non-binary, if you have a more femme-leaning side to you, it's not hard to do. And I don't want to have to be the person to define ways other people have to be. Masculinity is something I can probably define though, and I have said a few things defining that already. But I think that comes from the fact that I had to analyse it, and the masculinity that I put forward as who I used to be was not exactly a real view of it, but more a parody. The type you'd see an overly masculine character on a TV show do, so to speak. And so, to be honest, if we actually want to define femininity, maybe it's better to ask the trans guys, because they're the ones that had to fake doing it for so long. Because when you fake doing something, you need to really analyze it to actually get an understanding of how to fake it. It's what method actors do. And so boys, if you are the sort of person who has to put a lot of effort into being masculine, there is an easier option. That effort is optional. You can just choose not to. And I would even say it's a waste of time to pretend to be something you're not. So if you do feel this way, maybe there's something you need to consider about yourself. You know what I mean. Let's be real, cis guys, especially those who are minorities, enjoy maybe a little bit more equality than the rest of us. If people are so proud that they could be self-made men, why is there such a bias towards male success in the world? Surely these guys would prefer to succeed on their own merit rather than on the merits of the suffering of others. The only self-made men are trans men, so they're the only ones that can really claim that. But despite the fact that clearly I am not in as good a position as I was when I was presenting as a cis guy, I actually feel like from most people I get a lot more respect now than I used to. As a guy, other guys would show me respect, but it wasn't the same sort of respect. It was a respect of, how do you do, fellow man? As a result, you'd get more opportunities because people just assumed you knew more. But I was bullied at school, which was an all-boys school, by the way. I can't imagine any possible reason I didn't fit in there. I don't really get why I was bullied because I don't really think I had many signs as a kid, but somehow these guys knew, and they knew that I was an outsider and therefore less worthy of respect. Since living as a woman though, like I was saying, I feel a lot more respect now, mainly from other women and queer people in general. And to be honest, despite the fact that I am noticeably discriminated in a lot of areas of my life as a trans woman, I do feel like the world is a nicer and friendlier place in general than it used to be. Probably because I don't need to put up with all the weird competition that comes with being a guy. Obviously the world isn't actually a nicer and friendlier place for women, especially trans women. But in general it does feel friendlier, at least as long as the sun is out. Because that is one disadvantage of being a woman. Going out when it's dark can sometimes be kind of scary depending on where you live. Getting catcalled is an interesting experience, but not one that I would say makes the world a friendlier place. But I have people I can talk to about these issues now. If you've been a guy for a while, you've maybe noticed that those support systems kind of don't exist for guys. As a woman, I know I have a bunch of different ways to access support from a variety of different people who are actually going to listen to my problems and allow me to talk about them as much as I want to. But a lot of those people I'm talking about are the same people I had before, but when I was a guy, the expectation around how I should handle problems was a completely different thing to how it is now. From my past experience, people just expect men to solve their own problems and not get support from others. And because of that, it means a lot of guys don't look for support either because it's not manly to get support. You don't want to look weak. And to be honest, it's not a surprise. There's a big difference between when you talk about a problem with a decent amount of cis men as opposed to when you talk about the problem with other different types of people. You'll often get a lot of listening and respect and understanding. You'll get to talk through your problem, get it out of your system. Even if getting it out of your system means mainly just ranting about it. And I know you, as a guy, probably do actually want to be able to do that with someone. The option often isn't available because it's not what's expected of you. You're expected to just solve your own problems. But a lot of cis guys have a lot of cis guy friends, and when you complain about your problem to other cis guys, they're generally just gonna give you a solution to your problem without actually listening to it because that's how it goes. That's how it always went for me in the past. And then that's the end of it. That problem's sorted and done with, and you just have to deal with it. The support systems aren't there to actually accurately support you, which leads to a lot of guys falling deeper into this rabbit hole of not having support. And because of that, it's a cycle that perpetuates itself, and it keeps on going and going with it getting people have been treated like that, so they need to treat other people like that. They need to explain to you how to solve your problem because that's how they've got through their problems in the past. Other people giving them a solution which then they're expected to follow up on without actually working through the emotions necessary to get through and solve that problem. Which actually brings me to another point which I know you boys often don't like, which is mansplaining. I know I used to do it too before I transitioned. I won't lie, it's kind of expected of you. And to be honest, honestly, I think it's a habit I sometimes still do. Maybe that's why I'm doing this. The moment I started presenting feminine to people, that was the moment all of a sudden it started happening to me. So here's what you're missing out on right now as a guy. You've probably never, or at least rarely, had someone very confidently and condescendingly explain in detail to you a topic which you know a lot about and explain it in a very condescending way. I know this stuff does happen to guys. I have definitely had it happen to me before I transitioned. The scale to which it happens, it's not at the same level. Two takeaways from this. One, if you want a better support structure, yeah, it's better to be a woman or get better friends. Or if you want people to talk to you in a condescending way, well, that's another reason, I suppose, but maybe not as good. It's annoying, but it is very funny. I mean, everyone knows women have dating so much easier, right? At least that's kind of what you have drilled into you growing up. You get so many options and everybody wants to talk to you. You just feel so popular. And to be honest, being a woman with a little extra, it barely impacts the amount of people who want to talk to me. You can basically go and get some pretty much whenever you want. Okay, that bit is true. And to be honest, it is kind of true. You do get everybody wants to be involved with you. Everybody wants a piece of you. And if you, the viewer, is someone who has grown up male, that might sound something good to you, especially if you're someone who's never questioned their gender. Free access to anybody within like 30 minutes if you desperately wanted it. It's pretty good. But it does mean you run into a quality-quantity issue. As a guy, dating apps are generally a numbers game. Most guys seem to swipe on every single person they see and then just hope for the best over time. You throw enough bait, eventually you're going to catch a fish or something. But what that means as a woman using a dating app is you basically know that you almost have the pick of anybody you want on those apps. Even as a trans woman, you have pick of whoever you want. When you have so much choice, it becomes a lot harder. And it can feel like because you're comparing to so many people, most of the options suck. And to be honest, a lot of them probably do. You run into this issue of quality versus quantity. Yes, you can get anybody you wanted from these apps, but how many of them are actually going to be any good for you? But on the other side of things, at least you get matches. Something you don't really get as a guy. Also, I've heard. Because, to be honest, I never actually dated as a guy. The only time I dated was when I was 15 and I went on one date with one woman and then we stayed together basically until I transitioned and remain friends to this day. But you know, straight relationships don't really continue after both of you are women, so... But here's what you're currently missing out on as a guy in a relationship. When you're actually in that relationship, you have limited options of what you're able to do to help out around the house because you can only do the manly things, of course. Taking the bins out, cutting the grass, DIY. Okay, I guess there's not much. One, you're missing out on the rest of the chores. And two, you're missing out on endless chores. Stereotypical women's chores, whether they should be or not. Cleaning, doing washing up, general tidying of everything, stuff like food. They never really have an end. There's always another one coming along very soon, or there's no real way to finish a lot of them. There's always more you can clean. So you, right now, as a guy, are missing out on those ongoing chores. Yeah, you might be thinking, but I can stop doing them at some point and go play video games. Yeah, but you don't have that constant nagging pressure that there's something you could be doing instead. You don't get the satisfaction of always having more to do. More expected of you to do, at least. I always try my best to keep up and keep it fair, but because I was pretending to be a guy, I obviously needed to pretend to want to do all the stereotypically masculine stuff and not the feminine stuff. Because if I did that feminine stuff, that would have been like straw that broke the camel's back, if you've heard that before. Basically, final thing that would tip me over the edge. And that wasn't fair, but hey, blame it on the dysphoria. But also, as a guy doing dating, you don't have that inherent risk that comes from being a woman dating. You see, being a woman, or to be honest, a queer person in general, there is that extra inherent risk that comes along with it. That risk that the person you're meeting might want to murder you. Yeah. And you never quite know what it's going to be until you actually meet them. Yeah, 99% of people are going to be fine, but not 100%, and you can never be sure. And it just adds to the thrill of it, you know? As maybe toxic as it is from my viewpoint, going on dates with guys is a very interesting experience to going on dates with women. As someone who's bi, I go on dates with anyone regardless of gender. And going on dates with cis men is very interesting. You get your coat taken off for you, you get your chair pulled out for you, and you then just kind of sit and listen to them for like an hour or 2 hours. And as someone who likes to talk, it's nice to rest my voice once in a while and just listen to someone tell me about stuff I already know. It's a weird game you have to play, and having been on both sides of it, not as so much from one as the other, it's very fun. And I definitely prefer the women's side of it, and I think you would too. So I would honestly say, maybe it's better to be the girlfriend rather than have the girlfriend. Or both, if it's an option for you. But even though I've given you a lot of really good reasons, it's probably not convinced you, because there's only really a few reasons which are more important to look at to consider whether you actually do feel like it's not worth it to be a guy. I can talk about my reasons, but it's different for everybody, of course. For me, I've had a general discomfort with my body since I was quite a young child. I would frequently have dreams and wishes that I was born differently to how I currently was. I'd look in the mirror and I'd see someone I didn't recognize most of the time. When I was around friends at school, I would wish that I could be with the girls instead of with the guys, but at a certain age, all of a sudden, those groups split up and you're no longer with the group of people you want to be with. I didn't want to ever run around doing the dumb stuff with the guys. I always knew that it wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I had to do to fit in. And I wanted to sit, and as stereotypical as it is, just sit on the floor braiding flowers together with the rest of the girls. But I couldn't. I had to fit in. And throughout my young years as a kid, pre-puberty, this was how it was all the time. I would want to watch the programs on TV my sister was watching rather than the stuff that I was expected to watch, because I just felt like I wanted to have some sort of connection to the femininity that I couldn't show at the time. I didn't know why I couldn't show it. As I got older and eventually hit puberty, that was when things went really badly. I could feel my body changing in ways I didn't like, but it was at a time when the word transgender wasn't really a known word. The idea that you could change gender was not a thing that people really knew existed. At least not to a teenager. And the knowledge I did have was from a TV show I saw when I was 5 where trans women were being mocked. So I would lie awake most nights wishing that I was born in a different body to the one I was born in. It was at this point fitting in at school became near impossible because I didn't fit in with the people I was expected to be with. Especially being at an all-boys school growing up, being expected to sit and be with the guys the whole time with no other option. It was horrific, and I was bullied horribly as a result. For reasons that, as a kid, I didn't even know it was weird to think the things I was thinking. I assumed everyone was like that and suppressed it. As I got older and I moved school to a mixed school again, and I got the opportunity to interact with women, if anything, it made me more jealous. It made me jealous of the life I was missing out on. My body was getting more masculine as the male puberty set in and did more and more to me. My voice deepened, I started growing muscles in places I didn't want, and my face structure changed in ways I didn't want to. It was at this point I started getting quite bad depression and anxiety, without knowing the reason why for many, many years. Eventually I ended up taking more drastic measures to try and deal with it because I didn't see a way out and I needed to do something to distract myself from how I was feeling. Luckily, I managed to talk with my parents about some of this, and I managed to get them to get me to therapy, but although the therapy helped deal with the general anxiety and depression, it didn't help solve the problem because I didn't know what the problem was at the time, because there was no awareness that this could be a problem. And so I would look in the mirror and I'd see someone I didn't recognize every single day and just assume that was totally normal. I moved away to university, at which point a couple years in I started experimenting with my gender and then shut that down because I was too scared to confront these thoughts that I was having. When I'd see myself looking in the way I did, I couldn't see anything but shame. Like I was disappointing people, like I wasn't living up to the expectations that had been set for me. All at the same time getting better at repressing these thoughts and getting more depressed as a result. And I got angry with myself a lot because I hated myself. And then one day I got COVID. I could no longer distract myself with things so that I didn't feel the ways that I did. And it forced me to confront this thing about me that I'd been ignoring this whole time. That I'd been a woman this whole time and I'd just been ignoring it for so goddamn long. And accepting this about myself made everything click into place. I still hated how I looked in the mirror. If anything, it made my hatred of my body worse than it ever was before. But it set me down the path that led to where I am now. It led to me starting hormones 6 months after I came out, and it led me to where I am now, which is finally mostly happy with my body and very happy with my life in general. Happy with my life as the person I actually am rather than the caricature I was playing before. I have friends that I'm closer with. I have better connections with my family than I used to have. And although my relationships with a lot of people have changed, my overall relationship is better. And I know I've complained about a lot of stuff about being a woman in this video, but it does not matter how bad a lot of the stuff I've described is, because although that shouldn't exist in the way it is, I would not give it up for anything. Death before detransition. So if you're feeling similar, or maybe you were born and assigned female at birth and you're feeling the exact opposite to me, or maybe you're feeling somewhere in the middle of everything I've said, but you've been suppressing it, don't. Accept this part of you and let it be free, because letting it be free is the only way that you're going to find the happiness that you're missing.